So it's another Sunday, and once again I'm gonna be dropping the transmission out of my S14 for like the 20th time this year. Having issues with the transmission since basically day one, using a adapter plate to get the dog box connected to the 2JZ block. I've ran into some issues where I kept breaking my input shaft of the transmission. So I thought I had it all squared away. I had a custom input shaft made with the right length for the pilot bearing, and for some reason when I reassembled the transmission, something went wrong and I keep having loud grinding noises present every time I drive the car. Discover is that the noise is actually coming from my reverse gear rod. So it looks like I left something loose, or maybe misplaced a washer or something inside of the transmission that's now causing the reverse gear to grind on itself when the transmission's rotating. So I'm just gonna have to drop the transmission and go from there. Alright, so the transmission's out. As you can see, I left the bell housing and the adapter plate in place. That's the beauty of having a dog box. It's once everything's disconnected, like the drive shaft and the shift linkage, all you got is 4 bolts to drop the transmission. It's relatively light to where one person can do the job just underneath the car. Alright, let's rip the trans apart and see what's going on inside. So this is your standard T101A transmission, Texas Racing 4-gear. As you can see, the linkages are connected to the forks behind the plate. So this would be your first and second gear, third and fourth gear, and then your reverse gear. Simply by shifting it, the rods move the forks inside and throw you straight into the gear you want to be in. So if you take this housing plate off, see you got the forks and the straight cut gears. It's a very simple setup. Every gear is replaceable. Every gear can be changed to the ratio you want, which makes this very helpful in the racing world. You can fine line everything on your car with the gear ratios you want. So what I had a problem with before is this input shaft. It was too short to go into the pilot bearing. So for a 2J application, the input shaft was too short. So what Excessive Manufacturing did for me is they created this adapter that will go on the input shaft end into a custom pilot bearing. But the problem was that the pilot bearing that they gave me was a non-lubricated bearing. So with a short amount of race time, the bearing would seize, and as you can see, it would just snap the input shaft. And that actually happened to me twice. Second time around, it actually took out the main transmission output shaft, just grinded it away, and yeah, that was like a $1,200 mess up that I wasn't very happy with. But after the second input shaft failure, I actually ordered a custom input shaft, which gave me the extra necessary length to reach the pilot bearing, so I no longer have that problem. But as I was assembling the transmission, I goofed up somewhere, as you saw earlier in the video, and now I have this grinding noise that I have to figure out. But I know it's somewhere in here, so I'm gonna take the trans housing apart and take a closer look. Alright, so I took the back section of the transmission off, and this is where the reverse gear is, and right away I noticed that the little teeth marks from engagement are not lined up, as almost like directionally. So I pulled this gear off and I noticed that it's off-centered, which may cause clearance issues, and I had it flipped around backwards, and that's the reason of my problem. You can see right here that the gear was being grinded by the reverse gear even though it wasn't engaged. Simple mistake on my end that has caused me a lot of headache for in the last 3 months, I want to say, because I've just let this sit and I didn't want to deal with it. Yeah, well, I'm glad I figured it out. Now it's time to just reseal the transmission, put it back together, and go drifting. Yeah, drifting. Can't wait. Transmission's back in, and I was tightening up my exhaust, and I managed to strip a bolt, and now I can't get the nut off, so I guess it's cutting time. Yeah, it's just one of these things that happens, I guess. You know, you take these bolts on and off a couple times, they heat up from the exhaust, they shrink, and they strip. So, yeah. Off to cutting I go.
Very sunny trip.
Alright, so the transmission's back in, fluid's back in, everything's nice and tight. Let's see if the problem's solved. looks like it's fixed. I'll see you guys later.